So we're reading from the Transcendental Diary of Srila Prabhupada this morning, Volume 4, Chapter 4, entitled New Delhi. Is it what you do? Just read, right? I have some comments or something that we discuss them, right? Is it correct? Is it how it's been done? If I do something incorrectly, please tell me. And then if you devotees have any questions or comments on what we read, then there'll be time allotted for that. But one thing before we read Prabhupada's Transcendental Diary, one thing to say is that actually the activities and qualities and pastimes of pure devotees of Krishna actually are the Shastra, the Bhagavatam, as Srila Jiva Goswami explains in his, I think it's Tattva Sandarbha. He says in the commentary on Tattva Sandarbha, his own commentary, he says that the Shastra is made or has basis in the activities of great devotees, and the Bhagavatam itself is made of descriptions of what pure devotees do, discuss among themselves, how they serve Krishna. It's not that it's always about Krishna himself, it's also about the activities of pure devotees. Just like now in the Bhagavatam we describe or discuss the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 25, the activities of King Puranjana, and what we read about in those verses is a discussion between Narada Muni and King Prachina Barhishat. And those discussions have unlimited spiritual potency. Sometimes Prabhupada even explains, and the Shastra explains, that what pure devotees discuss among themselves has even more effect on the consciousness of those who read it than the activities of Krishna himself. Somehow Krishna likes to invest his spiritual potency in the activities of his pure devotees, and he gives glories to them. He could have done everything himself. Prabhupada explains in one of the purports on the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna could have defeated the enemies at the battle of Kurukshetra himself, but he gave the credit for that to Arjuna. In the same way, Srila Prabhupada explains in that purport, he says, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could have himself distributed his name around the world, but he chose one devotee and gave it to him. And that's how Prabhupada said. He doesn't mention who the devotee is, leaving us guessing. Who can the devotee be? What Lord Chaitanya chose to delegate the mission of propagating the holy name of the Lord, or the mission around the world. All right, and Prabhupada says, well, that's what Krishna likes to do. He is independent and self-sufficient, but the way he manifests or utilizes his self-sufficiency is that he selects a pure devotee and he self-sufficiently depends on him. That's how he explains. He says that's what Krishna likes to do, and that's called his causeless mercy. The actual causeless mercy of Krishna, Prabhupada explains, is when he depends for everything on his devotees. That's what he calls causeless mercy. And then Prabhupada says, you cannot really understand it unless you understand the nature of the servant and the served. It's very confidential relationship in which the Lord and his servant apparently change places. The Lord becomes dependent on his devotee, and the devotee becomes independent, meaning that he or she, whoever they decide to give Krishna to them, that's what it is. Then that person becomes a devotee. And Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur explains also in his Madhurya Kadambini that that's the only way to get access to Krishna's mercy, through his devotee, because Krishna doesn't give it directly. Even if someone tries to get it from him directly, Krishna doesn't give it to him. He likes to route his mercy through his devotees, and that's the only way. Durvasa Muni in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam came directly to Krishna or to Narayana. Being chased by Sudarshan Chakra, he comes running for his life to Lord Narayan, asking him to revoke the Sudarshan chakra, and the Lord said, well, sorry, I can't help you. I'm not independent. Aham bhakta paradinoh yasvatantra ivad vijaha. Sadubir grasta hridayam bhaktar bhakta janapriyaha. He says, I appear to be independent, Durvasa, just for your notice, but I'm not independent. I'm completely, you could say, enslaved or captured, controlled by my devotees. Whatever they want to do with me, that's what I do. And I'm always in their hearts, captured by their hearts. And what to speak of my pure devotees like Maharaja Ambarish, even the devotees of my devotees are very dear to me. Like that. So it's not just only they have that custody of me, but also the devotees of my devotees have by extension the same controlling power by the wishes of my pure devotees. Like that. So that means, coming back to the Transcendental Diary, that reading about Srila Prabhupada and his transcendental pastimes is Krishna Katha. It is Krishna's personal pastimes. Once Prabhupada was again walking, I think it was in Delhi actually. He was walking with his disciples, and one disciple asked Prabhupada a question, very relevant question. He said, Prabhupada, we heard from you that one cannot go back to the spiritual world directly. One has to go first and take birth in the universe where Krishna manifests his pastimes. Right? So there are pastimes that Krishna manifests manifests in different universes, one after another, compared to the sun. The sun travels through our different time zones, and whenever the sun sets, it actually rises somewhere else. So Krishna manifests, moves through different universes, and Prabhupada explains in one of his purports in Krishna book that unless one takes birth in that universe where Krishna is manifesting his pastimes, he cannot go back to the spiritual world. So we are practicing here, doing sadhana, then we die, and then we have to take birth in the place where Krishna manifests pastimes. And then, if we are lucky, we go back to the spiritual world with him. So the devotee asked Prabhupada, so Prabhupada, is it true? Is it correct that we cannot really go back to the spiritual world directly? We have to take birth again, at least one more time. Prabhupada said, well, what's the difference? You take birth in the universe where Krishna is present, or in the spiritual world, there's no difference. But that devotee wasn't happy with the answer. He said, but still, Prabhupada, can we, and then he actually asked the question he wanted to ask. He said, can we understand that the Lord Chaitanya is manifesting his pastimes in this universe, and we took birth in this universe? This is the universe, and therefore it's the last time that we take birth. And Prabhupada says, sorry, I don't follow, what's the question again? And then the devotees explained to him again, can we understand that this is universe in which Lord Chaitanya is manifesting his pastimes, and therefore it's the last time that we take birth and go back to the spiritual world? And then Prabhupada says, yes, provided you take part in the pastime of Lord Chaitanya. If you're preaching Sankirtana, then you're taking part, then you're qualified, then you go back to the spiritual world. If you're not preaching, then you have to take birth again and learn to preach. And then go. So Prabhupada explained. And of course, Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or you could say the pure devotee. He even sometimes made very bold statements about his own activities. Once in Australia, and I actually know the family, the devotees who asked the question, his brother and sister, and they came to a program with Srila Prabhupada in Melbourne. And the sister, her name was Tanya, she asked the question, she said, Prabhupada, why didn't you come earlier? What kind of questions devotees would sometimes ask, why didn't you come earlier? If Krishna consciousness is so urgent, why didn't you come to the West before to spread Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada told her, you know what he told her? Shall I tell you? He told her, because you were not born yet. Because you were not born, we were waiting for your birth. Now that you're born, we came to take you. Now you come with me. Now we were waiting for your birth to come and rescue you. And he was very serious. You listened to I listened to his recording, and Prabhupada was very serious. He wasn't making just a joke. So no, we were waiting for your birth. So now that you are born, we gave you the opportunity to take part in that Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. What's the statement by Narottam Das Thakur that Prabhupada quoted? Gaurangera Sangi Jana Nityasiddha Karimana. That I consider all Lord Chaitanya's devotees to be Gaurangera Sangi Jana Nityasiddha Karimana. I consider them to be Nityasiddhas. And then Prabhupada makes a statement in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right there in the purports. He says, you shouldn't think that Lord Chaitanya's personal associates, Nityasiddhas, eternally liberated souls, they're in the past, and they're there, stuck in the past. Yesterday, Sarupa Damodar Prabhu and Mataji Sukumari and Arinda Sarupa, myself, were driving back from the program, were discussing that topic about how sometimes we think that great devotees are only there in the past. Like in ISKCON we have only two great devotees, Jayananda Prabhu and Vishnujan Maharaj. The legendary devotees. No, Prabhupada says whoever takes part in Lord Chaitanya's preaching mission is to be considered a Nityasiddha. And that's everyone. Whoever preaches, he or she are Nityasiddhas, as long as they preach. When you stop preaching and stop being Nityasiddha, now you're being judged by that regular tariff of regular devotee. And that's how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also explains in one of his answers to this question. He says, there are two categories of devotees of Lord Chaitanya. There is Gaura Bhaktas and Gaura Sangis. Now, Gaura Bhaktas are those devotees who just worship Lord Chaitanya as Lord. They have a deity of Lord Chaitanya on their altar, or they read Chaitanya Charitamrita and do whatever a гаудия-вайшнава is supposed to do. So they're nice, Gaura Bhaktas. But then he says there is another category, Gaura Sangis. And Gaura Sangis are those who live by that sense of separation from Krishna that Lord Chaitanya manifested. In that mood of separation, they try to preach to others. They don't think they can remedy their own condition, but they are trying to remedy the others' conditions of separation from Krishna by preaching. And they're the ones who are Nityasiddhas. And they go back to the spiritual world directly. So basically Prabhupada explains, take your pick. You choose which category you want to fit in, and then everything will develop accordingly. Right, so that's, with this preface, we can read Prabhupada's pastimes from Transcendental Diary. If it were up to me, I would have mandated in ISKCON to, it sounds very presumptuous, right? To have devotees read books about Prabhupada before they read Prabhupada's books. Like at least Prabhupada Lilamrita, because when you read about Prabhupada, you understand the context of his personality, you understand who he is. And then when you read his books, you understand, with that understanding, who that very merciful and powerful and compassionate and attentive and humane and humorous and very, very relatable personality is. And then you take his instructions. Sometimes they seem to be very harsh in some of the purports of Srila Prabhupada, but then you take such words of Prabhupada in the right context. Again, Sarupa Damodar Prabhu and myself discussed a few days ago about how some unfortunate people mistake Prabhupada's words and his purports and try to depict him as a put it mildly, as a person stuck in his own historical past. But it's not like that, because Prabhupada is fully transcendental, and the transcendence of Srila Prabhupada manifests as his unique qualities that captured the love and heart and commitment and surrender of all of his contemporaries, ladies and men. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Diary, Volume 4, Chapter 4, New Delhi, August 28, 1976. Srila Prabhupada went to Lodi Park again for his walk, despite his still feeling weak. He sat for most of the time on a bench under some trees. At least he's going for his walk quite regularly now. Since returning from Europe, his health has definitely improved. I don't know how many of you have been to Lodi Park Gardens in Delhi, but I have been, and it's very nice. It's a very nice, clean place. Probably one of the cleanest places in Delhi, Lodi Park, Lodi Gardens. A letter came today from Tamal Krishna Goswami concerning the situation in Africa. He confirmed that both Brahmananda and Chavana Swami are having difficulties. After his fall down, Chavana saw Srila Prabhupada in New York. Then later he requested permission to go back to Africa. Srila Prabhupada sent him a letter telling him not to go, but he was gone anyway. So Tamal Krishna said he will go to Africa soon to check the situation. So that's what Prabhupada had to deal with. Some of his disciples, even though immature spiritually manifested, the level of independence they were not ready for yet. And Prabhupada oftentimes admonished his disciples for being independently minded and telling them, what was that episode that Shrutakirti Prabhu remembers when he was here half a year ago. He remembered how Prabhupada was walking on the morning walk, and devotees, when he walked out of his residence, bowed down to him, except one devotee, and he remained standing, and he just folded his hands and bowed his head. And Prabhupada remarked quietly to his servant, this is the beginning of his fall down. Like that. Starts very subtly. And then towards the end of his stay in this world, Prabhupada also was quite disappointed with those devotees who were eager to take sannyas, because he could see that taking sannyas for them equaled being independent and doing whatever they wanted. And they were not ready for that. Prabhupada said, no more sannyasis. I finished. I don't want to give any more sannyas to devotees just because they, what is the saying in English, given someone enough rope to hang himself. That's what it turned into in some cases. And Jagannath Sutta Das, the editor-in-chief for Back to Godhead, sent a letter along with 10 copies of the latest issue, volume 11, number 9. He expressed his desire to be allowed to continue assisting His Divine Grace in pushing on Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtana movement. Srila Prabhupada was pleased to receive the magazines and humbly replied, actually, I am dependent on your mercy. If you kindly follow my instructions and continue to push on Krishna consciousness, that will make me very happy. You must very strictly observe the regulative principles and chant 16 rounds a day, and Krishna will give you guidance. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Tisham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tan yanamama payanti tet. Those who worship me with love, Krishna gives the guidance so that they can come back to Him. The more you give service to Krishna, the more you become advanced. Yasyadeve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha gurav tasyaiti kathite hyarthah prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who simultaneously have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of the Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. This is the secret of success. And Srila Prabhupada singled out this verse as the most important verse of all the Vedas. The Vedas have millions of verses. If you condense them into one, distill them into one drop of essence, like you have flowers, rose petals, and it takes about how many 10 kgs of rose petals to produce one drop of rose flower oil, or maybe even more than that. And so if you take all the verses of the Vedas and condense from them, distill from them the essence, that fragrant oil, how will that sound like? And that's how Prabhupada explains. This is the most important verse. He actually asked the devotees a question, what's the most important verse? And they came up with different ideas. Sarva dharman parichaja, mamakam sharanam vraja. And there are so many other options, whether Mahaprasada Govinde, Nama Brahmani Vaishnavi. But Prabhupada said this is the verse, Yasya Deve Parabhaktir Yatha Deve Tatha Gurau from the Upanishad. Tasyaiti Kathite Hiratach Prakarshantem Mahatmanaha. The Vedas automatically reveal themselves to those who have implicit faith in both the Lord and Yasya Deve Tatha Gurau, the spiritual master. Prabhupada added a note about Sumati Morarji's recent complaint. Quote, by the way, there has been some disturbance created by the publishing of a few commentaries on Vallabhacharya in Bhakti-Garid, volume 10, number 8, page 5, column 3, paragraph 2. Kindly avoid comments such as these in future publications. Well, here Harishauri Prabhu circumvents that particular passage, but it was published, also discussed somewhere else, that the devotees in their eagerness to present Prabhupada's words, they were overzealous in some ways sometimes, and they published an article about Vallabhacharya calling him what Lord Chaitanya called him, Veshyakarimani, a prostitute, someone who doesn't accept the instructions of the Swami, Shridhar Swami. I consider a prostitute. So they published that with some comments. And Sumati Morarji, who was actually a follower of Vallabhacharya, she was a follower of a Vaishnava line called Pushtimarka. Vallabhacharya is the revered founder of that line. And she found those comments to be extremely offensive and wrote a complaint to Prabhupada about how Vallabhacharya is being derided and maligned in the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada had to write to her separately, trying to pacify her and apologize to her on the behalf of his disciples for their immature comments about Vallabhacharya. Gunarnava Prabhu is here from Vrindavan. He went in to see Srila Prabhupada this afternoon to discuss his service. Although he has been supervising the construction and finishing work on the buildings, and his presence there has been fairly essential, he now wants to leave Vrindavan and go to the Middle East to collect funds for Krishna Balaram Mandir with Tribhuvanath Prabhu. Has Tribhuvanath Prabhu ever come to South Africa? No. But he was preaching in Africa, but never in South Africa, right? Somewhere up north. He was another such great liberated person who would ignite anyone with his enthusiasm and fearlessness and Krishna consciousness, right? To the point of being completely oblivious to his own physical condition. I heard that he had a very severe trauma of his head to the point of fracture, but even that didn't stop him from being his true self and preaching and going out and distributing Krishna consciousness. And one feature of Tribhuvanath Prabhu was, from what I heard, I think I saw him. It was back in the days. I saw him once or twice personally. But devotees who were with him, traveling, they remember that they never saw him sleep. Nobody saw him go to bed, or maybe he didn't even go to. He would sometimes just sit somewhere by the staircase and he would just lean against the wall and sleep. But nobody saw how he fell asleep, and nobody saw how he would get up. He would go. He was the last to go to take rest, and he was the first to get up. And he was always very happy. And there are many such examples of success in devotional service. So, understandably, Gunarnava Prabhu wanted to go and travel with Tribhuvanath Prabhu. For Gunarnava, it is a big change, and he wanted to be certain he was not displeasing Srila Prabhupada. He started out by saying that he had been in Vrindavan for over 4 years, and he was taking little pride in this, thinking it a major accomplishment. I don't know how Harishauri Prabhu detected that in Gunarnava Prabhu's demeanor, but somehow he writes about it. He was a little bit proud of his being in Vrindavan for 4 years. And also it's interesting how these devotees nowadays take these descriptions, because Gunarnava Prabhu is around, he's in Israel, right? One of the leaders of the Israeli Yatra. And once a disciple of Prabhupada, what was his name? Madhvadvish Prabhu. When he had his own difficulties in spiritual life, and then before he knew, it was broadcast around ИСККОН. There was no Facebook back then, but as it turned out, the telephone was enough. So one Prabhupada's servant got on the phone and he called every single major temple in ИСККОN, reporting about Madhudvisha Maharaj at that time, but he stepped down from sannyas difficulties. And then when Prabhupada found out about that, he was so unhappy, so angry with the secretary. He told him, now you have made it impossible for him to come back. So Prabhupada was very protective of his disciples, even though he would chastise them and discipline them and chasten them, but he would also be very protective of them, and he tried to treat them with, and he did, treat them with dignity and even confidentiality if necessary. So later on, it was reported in the Prabhupada Lilamrita, that entire accident with Madhudvisha Maharaj. And then he was asked in Vrindavan, so how do you feel about it? Now you're a hero of Prabhupada Lilamrita. You've earned yourself a place in Prabhupada Lila. Just like in Lord Chaitanya's Lila, you have Haridas, Chota Haridas, right? You have Kala Krishna Das, who also had his difficulties. Right in the presence of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya had to go and rescue him by his hair, dragging him out of the embrace of gypsy women. So how do you feel about it? He was asked, and Madhudvisha Prabhu said, well, I'm very fortunate because the ugly snake-like head of my pride cannot rear its head. Now it's documented, and there is no way to be forgotten in my difficulties in ИСККОН, because it's already reported in Prabhupada Lilamrita. It's very fortunate. He said that was his take on such personalized reporting in some of Prabhupada's pastimes. And have you learned Hindi? Prabhupada asked him pointedly, because he felt a little bit proud in knowing that he spent 4 years in Vrindavan. And have you learned Hindi? Prabhupada asked him pointedly. So Prabhupada had that knack as a spiritual master. He had not just the right but the obligation to detect faults in his disciples' behavior, and he would pop those bubbles of pride. And he said that if a spiritual master doesn't chastise his disciple, then he is committing violence to his disciple. That's the violence. That's the violent part of not chastising him, allowing him to go, or him or her, merrily with his conceit or his thinking about himself as an already accomplished devotee. And there are many instances, many stories. I have my favorite stories about it, but time is very short, so we won't be able to narrate them. But Prabhupada, how he treated one particular disciple, Brahmatirtha Prabhu, and how Brahmatirtha Prabhu remembers himself in remembering Srila Prabhupada. He recounts how he, from the very first days of his meeting with Srila Prabhupada up to the point of initiation and later, whenever he would come humbly, Prabhupada would always show him or shower him with his mercy. Whenever he would feel a little bit proud, Prabhupada would immediately change his demeanor, and he would immediately detect it, and he would deflate his pride. Like once, it was very nice actually, an incident from his interaction with Prabhupada, when he felt particularly humbled by the previous interaction with Srila Prabhupada, when Prabhupada just looked through him and he didn't even notice him. He was that famous Bob Cohen who Prabhupada spent so much time discussing different philosophical points and showed so much affection to, right? And then he came, I think it was New York, and someone introduced him again to Prabhupada, saying, Prabhupada, this is the same boy, Bob Cohen, who you spoke with in Mayapur. And that discussion became perfect questions, perfect answers. Thinking that Prabhupada would be very, very happy to see him, but because he detected some pride in Bob Cohen, Prabhupada just said, oh, and he just turned away. didn't give him any special attention. Then he took note of that, and next time when Prabhupada was present and he was walking through a crowd of devotees were offering obeisances to him, Bob Cohen, thinking himself to be completely undeserving of Prabhupada's attention, he was on the floor offering obeisances to Prabhupada and his pranama mantra. By that time he had already learned it. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna. And he deliberately, he kind of detected Prabhupada's trajectory, and he could see where Prabhupada was, at the speed with which he was going, and he calculated that if I chant the pranama mantra at such a pace, Prabhupada will have definitely passed by me by the time I'm done chanting it. So he was slowing down, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale. He didn't want to present himself to Prabhupada as somebody very important. So he finished finally, and he opened his eyes and he raised his hand on his head, and Prabhupada was standing in front of him waiting for him to finish. And he said, I'm so happy to see you, and embraced him. Like something like that. So then he remembered how next time again he felt a little bit proud, and Prabhupada again indicated that, and he cured him of that pride. So that's the exchange. That's how Srila Prabhupada, a spiritual master, is supposed to deal with his disciple, both by encouraging him or her and by deflating their pride. So Prabhupada asked him, okay, you spent 4 years in Vrindavan, have you learned Hindi? Gunarnava flushed and admitted he had not. And Prabhupada shook his head disapprovingly. Then, he said, meaning, so what's your great accomplishment, great achievement? Well, I've spent quite a few years in India and I haven't learned Hindi properly. I picked it up a little bit, I could probably manage, but Prabhupada would have probably been very unhappy with me as well. Duly chastened, his accomplishments brought back into proportion. Gunarnava went on to say that recently he had been disturbed by sex attraction. He felt he was getting a little stale by remaining in Vrindavan for so long, and that by venturing out to preach, it may rekindle his inspiration to remain a brahmachari. Otherwise, he said, he may end up getting married. Perhaps he was thinking that Srila Prabhupada would enthusiastically endorse his desire to remain a brahmachari, but Prabhupada remained sober and grave. Quote, once before you were thinking of marriage, he told him. Now again the same thing. Even if you leave Vrindavan, you will have to take your mind with you. So what is the use of running here and there? End quote. Srila Prabhupada made it clear that he would prefer him to remain doing his service, even if it meant getting married, although he will not stand in his way if he wants to go out and preach. Again, there was a very nice incident. I forget the name of the devotee. It's in Srila Following Prabhupada number 6 CD, and DVD, that is. And he narrated as a brahmachari, he was feeling also a little bit restless and disturbed by certain attractions in the temple where he served. So he ended up chanting his rounds late once. And the Prabhupada happened to be visiting the place, and he saw that Prabhupada was also up chanting late, of course for a different reason. Prabhupada would sometimes just chant extra rounds and he would chant throughout the day. You would never see Srila Prabhupada not chanting Krishna's names or preaching or discussing Krishna Katha. Even if he would take a nap, sometimes he would, coming back from the nap, he would immediately resume from the place he had left off discussing philosophy of Krishna consciousness with his disciples. So Prabhupada saw that young brahmachari was peeking through the door, looking at him chanting. And he noticed him and he invited him in. And he told him, okay, come in, let's chant together. So he took that opportunity and they chanted together for some time, and then they started a conversation. Prabhupada started asking him about his service, what he was doing, and then he started complaining to Prabhupada that, well, I'm brahmachari, but I feel agitated and I want to go. He had a desire to go to the Himalayas somewhere where there is, as he thought, less attraction, less objects of distraction. And Prabhupada looked at him with compassion, and he told him, and I quote, he said, do not go to the Himalayas, don't make this mistake. I have spent wasted 12 years in Vrindavan. He said, that was his, according to the devotee, I wasted 12 years in Vrindavan, meaning I was alone in Vrindavan. So I didn't accomplish anything until I went to the West and started preaching. So by the same token, you just do what your spiritual master tells you to do. That's the best and the most secure position. Don't waste your time going to a remote place and thinking you can perform bhajan there. Dushtamana tumi kisira vaishnava. Prabhupada would sometimes remember that bhajan by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. My dear mind, dushtamana. Dushta means not dear, dushta means wicked. My dear wicked mind, what kind of a Vaishnava are you? Thinking yourself to be renounced by chanting that holy name in a remote and isolated or reclusive place. Tava harinama kevala kaitaba. All your chanting in a secluded place is kevala kaitaba, pure, unadulterated cheating. Kaitaba. Jajara pratishtha shukarera vishtha. And then he went on to explain very unpleasant terms he used in that bhajan. Very painful for the sensibilities of his Bengali disciples. That all your Jajara pratishtha, that material, mundane fame that you're trying to achieve by putting on a show of being a great devotee, chanting in secluded places. Shukarera vishtha means the feces of a pig. Stone pig. And that's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's preaching to his disciples. So Prabhupada remembered sometimes that the desire to go to a secluded place and chant, thinking that will give us a boost in our spiritual life, is misleading. Then August 29th, 1976, Giriraj Prabhu arrived this morning. He accompanied Prabhupada on his walk through Lodi Park. And actually I found that recording. There is no recording of that conversation of the 28th of August, the previous one we've just read. But I found the recording of this conversation with Giriraj Prabhu, Giriraj Maharaj now, and the other devotees who accompanied Prabhupada in the Lodi garden. Was very interesting. If any of you would like to listen to it, I can share it with you. I have it here. Giriraj Prabhu arrived this morning. He accompanied Prabhupada on his walk through Lodi Park. As His Divine Grace strolled at a leisurely pace, Giriraj gave an upbeat report on the progress of the Bombay temple construction. He said that the carved marble is being attached to the columns in the temple room, and they are starting to put the domes on the gate. Just yesterday, he and Saurabha Swami went to see samples of attractive furniture which they will place in a model room. Of course, Swarupa Damodar Prabhu is here now, and he has made the Juhu temple his second residence. It was or first residence. Which one is first or second? In between somewhere. And, you have two. Don't know. And so he is, on this count and on any other count, more qualified to speak about the glories of the Juhu temple and how much Swarupa Damodar Prabhu's Guru Maharaj, Giriraj Maharaj, invested into that place. He even wrote that book, I'll Build You Temple, right? One of the latest books that Giriraj Maharaj wrote. It's a wonderful narration of that struggle and fight well fought by Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. He happily reported that Achyutananda Swami, who has remained there since the Janmashtami festival, is attending Mangala Arati every morning and giving both morning and evening classes in the temple. The devotees are also doing a lot of programs at Rotary Club, Lions Clubs, colleges and universities. Prabhupada smiled. So on the whole, it is coming nice. When Giriraja mentioned that nowadays the press is taking more interest in us, Prabhupada asked whether any action had been taken against Blitz. Blitz is a third-class tabloid newspaper that published a very nasty article about Prabhupada and his disciples. So Prabhupada didn't want to let that situation pass by without any action taken against them. So he instructed his disciples in the previous chapters about that Blitz publication. When Giriraja mentioned that nowadays the press is taking more interest in us, Prabhupada asked whether any action had been taken against Blitz. Gopal Krishna told him that after the leaders discussed among themselves, they had decided not to go ahead, and Giriraja began to explain it was not very certain that we would win. But Prabhupada told him it was not a question of winning, it was a question of discussing in the court and preventing the paper from giving further bad publicity. Giriraj gave another reason, quote, "You see, this man, the editor, he thrives on controversy and notoriety, so he lacks cases. And then when the case comes up, he gives the report of the case in the newspaper, so most people felt that he would be very happy if we filed suit." Gopal Krishna added that he knew the assistant editor of the Times of India and had spoken to him about it. His opinion was that if we wrote a strong reply, we could perhaps get the Blitz editor to print our reply on the 3rd page. Giriraja added that the Blitz has printed another article on us this week, quote, "They were very agitated that so many big ministers and people came to our function in Hyderabad," he said. Prabhupada began to chuckle. "Oh, that's nice." Nice meaning that both things, that the ministers came and that the guy in Blitz felt agitated by that. That's nice. Smiling, Giriraja went on, "Actually, it was good publicity. The headline was that the Andhra government is falling for our tricks. But all the subject was very good." Prabhupada told him about the good report he received from the Hyderabad papers. Giriraja said he had seen the clippings, including one that read, "CM praises ИСККОN." He went on with his praises. Praises is a French word for summary of the Blitz article, praises. In bold type, they quote the endowment minister that we owe a great debt of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada for reminding us of the great treasure that we have in our own culture. Grinning, Srila Prabhupada said that they had therefore already conceded the case to us, the Blitz newspaper. Giriraja told him, they mentioned that the commissioner of town planning designed the temple, they mentioned that the chief minister came, they mentioned that we have a farm to help the poor people. Prabhupada then was satisfied. "Oh, everything is there." As a final point, Giriraja added that he felt that nobody will take it seriously because everyone knows that it's just junk, meaning that newspaper. And Prabhupada agreed. It was a 3rd-class newspaper. And then there's something interesting starts. I think we'll finish with this, even though we still have about 3 pages to go, but those 3 pages have entirely different narrative about Prabhupada meeting one Western person, and also we don't have enough time. But this is quite nice, and I was tempted to find it for you and play it over the loudspeaker, but I may not be able to do it on a very short notice. Yeah, probably won't. I won't be able to find it for you so easily, but I should have prepared, but I just had that idea. I want to play to you the way Prabhupada, look at that, I have it. On the 29th. Yeah, it's right there. Morning walk, Delhi. It's somewhere in between, but in the middle of that audio recording. But let me just read it first. Maybe if you have time and if you feel inspired, we could play it for you. But then something very interesting. That Prabhupada, before that, he was discussing his international affairs, multi-million-dollar projects and difficult cases and how to challenge Blitz editors in court. That's one part of his walk in Lodi Garden. But then something else starts. Krishna Das. Who is Krishna Das? A 6-year-old son of our French Pujari, Omkar Das, and another youngster from America accompanied us to the park. So there are small boys, 6 years old, and you can hear them actually, their voices, very young children. And I'll read what I wanted to play for you. Let's see if we get to that. Srila Prabhupada took a lot of pleasure in teasing them as he walked, these two small boys. As they ran ahead down one pathway, Prabhupada took another. And they started calling from that, and they could hear them call, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, in their childish voices, Prabhupada, come here, come here. And Prabhupada tells them, no, I'm going another way. Go this way, Srila Prabhupada, the children called, Prabhupada left. You go this way, I shall go this way. Go this way, they shouted. No, you go that way, Prabhupada called back. No, you go this way, they cried. And goes back and forth. In the recording you can hear it. No, you go, Prabhupada laughed. We shall go this way. He teased them that they would have to stay at the park and walk back because they have no room in the car for them. That was very funny. And you can hear how Prabhupada enjoys teasing these boys and how the boys enjoy that kind of interaction with Prabhupada. They understood that Prabhupada was semi-serious. They couldn't really make out whether Prabhupada was completely serious or completely jovial or joking. But they kind of suspected Prabhupada was playing with them. But then when we got back to the car and they began to open the door, Prabhupada told them in mock seriousness, oh, you have to walk. Why are you getting inside the car? And then he told Harishauri, close the door. And you can hear the door slam. And the children get a little bit scared. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj in his kindness tell them, well, it's a straight road to the temple. Playing along with Prabhupada's mocking and teasing them. I joined in the fun. Harishauri Prabhu said, there is no room. Prabhupada said you have to walk. You have to stay in the park. Krishna Das, no, he shouted. And then he jumped in the car and locked the door behind him. Like that. Prabhupada enjoyed the exchange and he likes Krishna Das a lot. He's a very lively boy and very intelligent. On the drive back, Krishna Das turned to Srila Prabhupada and told him, you know the dress that was yesterday, deity's dress, the same as your birthday dress. He was referring to the outfit the deities wore yesterday, telling Srila Prabhupada that it was the one that had been offered to their lordships on Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja day. His father is the head pujari, like father, like son. And it's interesting. It's already over time, I think. Just 1 minute left, but I may not be able to start playing it for you. Let me see if it has loaded. No. I think the internet connection is not sufficient. Oh, yeah. Shall I? Just a few seconds, so you could actually see how they were enjoying their exchange. I think it's too difficult, too complicated technically. But I can share it with whoever you tell me to share it with, and you can listen to this exchange yourself. On another occasion, Prabhupada was given a class on the nectar of devotion in Vrindavan, that I listened to, and then Prabhupada was speaking about very serious subject matters, about rasa, about sadhana bhakti, principles of devotional service, and all of a sudden you hear him stop his talk and tell the devotee, first he told the boys, so boys, come over, come here boys, come here. And then he tells someone else in his attendance, give them sweets. No, give them each one in each hand. So Prabhupada really enjoyed interacting with children, not in a sentimental way, but in a way that would make them Krishna conscious. And he would descend from his position as a worldwide acharya down to the level at which he could relate to even simple children, encourage them in their spiritual lives. So Prabhupada, in this exchange with Krishna Das and another boy, shows just that. For him it was equally important. Speaking with his disciples, leading disciples about important international projects, and then teasing boys, children, into their teasing into affection, into their affection for Srila Prabhupada. Nowadays, you see these children, sometimes they don't become devotees, like in that regular sense. classical devotees. Sometimes they don't end up being sadhakas, that is. But all of them, whoever had interaction with Srila Prabhupada, love him and remain faithful to Prabhupada. The memories of Prabhupada's being so affectionate, so loving and so kind to them. Anyway, we'll stop here. Have any questions or comments? I don't know if you have any time for that. Is it allowed, Sarupa Damodar Prabhu? But maybe devotees don't have any comments. How many of you would like to be teased by Srila Prabhupada right now? Huh? Yes? How many? Okay, how many of you would like to be chastised by Prabhupada like we read? Not as many takers. Oh yeah, well, quite a few. Because it's equally as important. You could say that sometimes there's a joke that adults are different from children only by the cost of their toys. That's the difference. The cost of their toys. That's what sets them apart from children. And the same way, you could say that Prabhupada treated all of them as children, but sometimes some children have to be chastised and some of them have to be teased. But both receive the same. Just like Krishna, he had two categories of children. Some children were grown up sons in Dwaraka, and there were some underage children, small toddlers. And for them, Krishna as a father was the object of their affection. They would just climb on his lap, they would sit on his lap, they would take Mahaprasadam from his mouth, and they would hold on to Krishna's fingers, because they couldn't hold on to his hand, they would just hold on to his fingers. And they would also try to repeat Krishna's words in their broken language. That's how Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami describe Krishna's children. And then they are grown-up children, and those grown-up children, they were held to a different standard of behavior. They were supposed to be very well-behaved. They would have to be very obedient, and they would always imitate Krishna in all their activities, and they would always be very, very respectful and disciplined in his presence, to the point that they would not cough or laugh in the presence of Krishna. They would always be very, very self-controlled. So both are children, but the treatment is different because of the difference of age. So Prabhupada would sometimes chastise those disciples who he knew were able to take it properly. They wouldn't run away. All right, there is no comments, no questions. Shall we stop here? Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande.